It's your boy Zappa, and welcome to Plug Plug. Nah, just kidding. Can't do that bit by myself. Oh no, one of them is missing. Never mind that. I'm actually here for a completely different reason today. As you'll probably see in the title description below, I'll also bring the hashtag up on the screen with our little name slate. It's a hashtag I came across sometime earlier this week called GameStruck4. It's a Twitter and probably a Facebook hashtag. I'm sure you can also find it on YouTube. In regards to 4 games that really influenced and developed what kind of person that you've become today. This was started by what I've heard and what I've been told by ENB, EpicNameBro, also on YouTube. He came across this hashtag called MovieStruck4 by some movie company, and that hashtag similarly is for movies that have developed what kind of person you are. But myself as well, but he expressed that he's not really a movie guy, but he's a gamer. And as a guy that's, got Let's Play channel, streaming channel, and he's worked on the guides for Bloodborne and Dark Souls 3, it's quite obvious he's a gamer. And so he goes on in his video, which I'll also link in the hangar bay below, where we hang out, right? But he goes on to say and explain what his 4 games are that really developed what kind of person he has become today. So I would like to get in on this hashtag and, invite you guys as well to get in on GameStruck4. 4 games that have really developed what kind of person you've grown to become today. So that said, rather than unveiling Gunpla, I'm unveiling boxes. Get that out of here! The 4 games that I've taken the time to think about that have developed what kind of person I am are, in no particular order, Super Robot Wars Alpha Gaiden. Should have done that earlier. Suikoden 4 in particular. Guilty Gear X2, despite this is Guilty Gear Xrd. And Final Fantasy VI 3 in the US. We of course have physical copies of all these games, that's why we have the cases, but that's just how we roll. So I'm going to go ahead and shuffle these Gundam boys to the side so we can give the games a little more forefront. Put the big boy on the side. Huh, that looks nice, size. I digress. So again, in no particular order, I'm going to start with what should be the most important, Guilty Gear X2. I'm going to go ahead and... Which side is nicer? Is this side nicer? I think this side's nicer for graphics and post. Guilty Gear X2 features a character known as Zappa. He is possessed by a creature ghost that's very similar to Sadako. And yes, I love the Ring series. That is one of the 2 tattoos that I have. We'll discuss the other one later. But that character was also the very first cosplay I've ever done. Ever. It was my first cosplay. Halloween doesn't count as cosplay even if I tried to do Vincent Valentine once. My first cosplay was Zappa way back at Ushikon 3. This was, 18 years ago at least. I can't remember the math exactly. But that was my first costume. And I was unnoticeable. I wasn't kind of a face in the crowd, but not really. A few particular people remembered me. And those people would go on to run into me again at Ushikon 4 the next year. And I'd hang out with them, and we, being new to conventions, I kind of followed them around a bit. And back in that time, it was a time where you would get to be known more so for your cosplay than your actual name, unless you already had an established online handle. I didn't at the time, so when those friends, one of which I still live with to this day, they encouraged me to join the message boards for the conventions. This was back when MySpace was a deal, before Facebook, so you had message boards to keep in touch and have topics and all this stuff. And they urged me, like, hey, we've been calling you Zappa all weekend, we'll call you Zappa, why not sign up on these boards as Zappa? And that's where my name really picked up and locked on as Zappa. There's more to it, but that name also went with variances, and I reached a point where it's like, okay, I need to grow up from this name. Even though it's a username, it doesn't need to be a full name. So, over time, or, so I would just simply become to be known as Zappa. And that was, like I said, that was my first costume that I'd ever done, and it really stuck. It sticks to this day, so much so that I really don't like my legally given, my government name. It's incredibly common and generic, and anytime anybody says it, I turn my head, wait, are they talking to me? Of course they're not talking to me, they don't know me. But if anyone says, hey Zappa, I've clearly introduced myself to them as such, and what are the odds that I'm going to run into anybody else with that first or that last name? Which, by proxy, yes, that character was named after Frank Zappa, the legendary musician, whose work I'm not really familiar with. I just know the name. But that said, we're going to lay this down to rest, and we're going to move on to point number 2, which I believe we're going to go with Super Robot Wars Alpha Gaiden. This is a box set special for Super Robot Wars Alpha. Don't have a copy of Gaiden, unfortunately. Not a physical copy. But that was my first Robot Wars game, obviously. But that came at a time that I had really started to get into anime, like as a high schooler, as a teenager. Coming from my generation, a lot of people started anime in the afternoon block of Toonami. And I'd kind of taken a shine to the giant robot stuff that I'd seen already. Evangelion was confusing, but that was neat. G Gundam was the hypest thing I'd seen, and Gundam Wing had 2 or 3 reruns, so that was always a good, reliable watch. And I'd even started when a parent said, hey, you've got this book on giant robots, Battletech. There's Battletech on TV. There's a cartoon for it. That's kind of what got me by the hook there. And it would be about a year or 2 later that I would make a friend in high school, and her boyfriend, when I got to hanging out with him, he and I really clicked because he and I both at least had those roots in, hey, we like giant robots. It's like, hey, I also heard you like Final Fantasy Tactics, you talked about that, you like giant robots. Check out this game. And so he makes me a copy, and he goes through even the process of hooking up my PlayStation 2 so it can pop it in, play it, import, play whatever game I feel like. And I really dug into that, so much so that even without a guide, I'm playing the game, I'm writing names down on paper, so it's like, oh, this is Death Scythe on the menu, this is Combattler, this is Mazinger, and he and I would talk about it, and it was glorious, it was fantastic. I can't thank Deuce, I'm going to name drop you, my friend, so I expect you to watch this, I'm going to name drop him as someone who really helped me get to this juncture where I built Super Robot Wars upon Super Robot Wars, and into Gundam, and so on and so forth, to get me here. And now I have a mecha-related YouTube channel, I have a mecha-themed cosplay team, I have mountains of Gunpla that you've probably seen if you follow. That said, that is number 2 on the list, so we're going to put your boy down over here. Number 3 on the list, not number 3, but the third that we're going to talk about is Final Fantasy number 3, Final Fantasy VI. That was really my biggest foray into JRPGs, role-playing games at the time. I touched on Final Fantasy 1 and a little bit on Final Fantasy 2 thanks to my uncle who got me these games. And there was a time when he came over with his Super Nintendo, but he didn't bring the connections, and those aren't quite compatible with the Nintendo's connections, so I'm kind of out of luck. But he brought over Final Fantasy Mystic Quest and Final Fantasy VI. I took one over to a friend's house. I stayed the night there for his birthday, and I got to play it, and that was great. But when I came back the next morning, he'd already taken his game back home since, we couldn't play it at my house anyway, not without the connections. And he wasn't going to be over for another 2, 3, maybe 4 weeks, I don't quite recall. So it became that white whale of a game that he hyped up for me, and he told me all about, and then I had other friends telling me all about it, and I never actually got to play it. But what I did do for a really long time in middle school is I had this red folder, the paper folders that you'd have for school, and I wasted school's ink, behind their back, and I downloaded and I printed the biggest walkthrough that they had on GameFAQs at the time for Final Fantasy III. And I printed it, and I whole bunch it, and I put it in the book, and I even made little notes, but I read that from page to page, from opening, right past the copyrights, you were allowed to put this game on these sites and all that, the updates, all the way to the back end that had the item lists and hex codes for Game Shark, Game Genie. I read it from page to page, dozens of times over, waiting to finally get my hands on this game. And I never got my hands on it for more than a one-night rental, because that was the luck at the time, was a rental shop only allowed for a one-day rental, because it would be out everywhere else. So I got it for one day, and then I wouldn't be able to touch it again for months, for years on end. So much so that I even wasted money on the Nintendo Power Hotline to just listen to the exact same walkthrough, basically being told by someone who's reading the walkthrough, hey, you go here with these characters, you go here with these characters, and then this event happens, and you go to the opera, and so on and so forth. And it really wasn't until the re-release on the PlayStation that I was able to finally buy a copy. I grew up a console or two behind. Nintendo 64 is 2 years in when I got my Super Nintendo. It's, I never got a 64. PlayStation 2 is 6 months in, and I'm finally getting my PlayStation. And the dual pack of Final Fantasy 5 and 6 comes out, and finally, we in there. We in there, boys. And that's why we still in there. Lastly, and of course not least, even though 4, we're going to number 4 on this. Suikoden 4. Particularly the Suikoden series was a series that I got into also in high school. So much so that when I had the guide, I borrowed the game, but I had the guide of my own. I wore out the pages on the guide that I had to hole punch it, put that in a binder, and I remember that even that guide, it had pages that ended up were manufactured out of order. There were events printed in there out of order, typos, a whole dungeon was missing from the guide. It was hilarious, but I really got into Suikoden. I love that there's so many damn characters per game. It's huge. It's not so convoluted that you lose interest because there's so many characters. It had that great story to it. And so that was a series that I kept up with more so than Final Fantasy. Once I got 6 and I played 7, I was satiated. But Suikoden was around, and I'm okay, yeah, 2. Let's go back to 1. And then when I found 3 in stores, that was just by chance. And it was when 4 was coming out that was the time when I was logically and realizing that I could keep up online. Hey, games are being released. They announce these things, not just in magazines, but all over the internet. So I got to 4, and while 4 has its flaws, and I'm sure you could find a review and people will tell you about its flaws, it's not a bad game. It's just strangely executed. But it gets to a point that something kind of clicked to me at a time in my life. I had just moved, I was starting a new job, and it's man, I'm trying to do all this good. I'm trying to improve my life. I'm trying to move forward. I'm trying to do good. And I keep getting hit in the face with something bad happens. Something bad happens. Oh, I'm going to help this person. Oh, well, now I'm $100 in the hole. I'm going to go to work early. Oh, well, because of that, some weird thing happened. Like, it was just, I tried to do good, but something bad happens in return. I have negative returns for positive investment. I think that's what I'm trying to emote it as. So, it is in this game that the main character's spell rune, and all the magic is based on runes, and you have a number of casts per level. It works a little bit like D&D. You have the main character's rune is the punishment rune, and in that case, it is an offensive set of spells where you put out number towards your enemy, but then you take damage back in return. And I just kind of clicked, and it's like, I'm putting out effort to do good. I'm casting the offensive magic at my enemy to do good, but my return is something bad happens, as opposed to something good happens. It's positive effort, negative karma. You interpret that as you will. I feel it in my heart. I just don't know that I can properly emote it well. So much so that of my 2 tattoos, I have the punishment rune back here on my shoulder. And more often than I like to admit, it really just kind of makes me reach over and pat myself on the shoulder when I'm trying to do something good, say at work or for a friend. And it's just, there's something bad happened instead of something good happened. Just the other day, I tried to update some display paperwork at work. I think it was our food permit. I tried to put that, I hanged that up. We've got this nice picture frame for it. It's nice and updated. I hang it up on the wall. I make sure it's secure. I walk away. Nobody touches the wall. Nobody's near the wall. 5 minutes later, it and the picture frame adjacent to it both fall off the wall and shatter on the ground. This is unprovoked. The cosmos, the ghost of my job, decided, nope, you shouldn't have touched it in the first place. Fell down. But that is why these 4 games, I'll pick them back up. These 4 games, Alpha Gaiden, Suikoden 4, Guilty Gear X2, and Final Fantasy VI, those are my game struck 4. I have a hard time remembering that word as opposed to a different word. I think game shocked 4, game struck down 4, game struck 4. Those are my 4 games that really kind of built up to the kind of person that I am today. But why don't you take to Twitter, take to our comment section, take to your own YouTube channel, take to Facebook, and let us know. You can post yourself on Facebook, link it to us in the comments below. Hit us up on Twitter. I'll put my Twitter out there in the name slate, so y'all can respond to me there if you like. You can respond to us in the comments. You can respond to us on Facebook. What are your 4 games that really developed what kind of person you are today? But since I did tease you guys with another Gunpla video, after this we will feature another set of our Gunpla group Plebplas pictures following this. Hit us up, on Facebook, like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff. We're going to have our nice Char graphics showing up on the screen here pretty soon. And always, ZEON!